If you've ever had an evening that began with the quiet simplicity of routine and then unfolded into something unexpectedly tender, then you'll understand why I'm choosing to tell this story now, long after the embers of that night have cooled. Because even today, when I think back to the moment my son's friend stood by my fireplace waiting for me to turn around, I can still feel the same subtle shift in the air that made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't felt in years. And it all began on a winter night in this old house where warm rituals have become my steady companions. At 63, I've learned the comfort of rhythm lighting the fire at dusk, humming old melodies without realizing, cracking the window just enough to let a thread of cold air mix with the glow of flame, and I remember expecting my son, Daniel, home soon. Though he'd alerted me at the last moment that work had delayed him again, which wasn't unusual, and that his friend Evan, whom I had met a few times before and always found to be polite in that understated way that makes young people rare, might arrive earlier if he was already close. I didn't dwell on it, simply leaned toward the hearth, adjusting the stubborn log while the sound of the crackling fire moved through the room like an old, familiar voice. And then so softly I almost thought I imagined it, the floorboard behind me whispered with the weight of someone entering quietly, someone trying not to disturb me, and I paused without turning, thinking perhaps Daniel had slipped in without announcing himself. But the silence that followed wasn't the kind that accompanies a rushed arrival. It was warmer, almost expectant. And when I finally straightened and turned, brushing ash from my fingertips, I saw Evan standing a few steps from the firelight, hands tucked into his coat pockets. His face softened by the glow, as if he'd been standing there long enough to sink into the quiet. He greeted me gently, calling me Mrs. Hart, in a tone so soft it felt like a polite tap on the shoulder, and an unfamiliar warmth fluttered in me, not the heat from the flames, but something more personal. The warmth of being regarded with a kind of attention I wasn't used to. Any more so, I welcomed him in, smoothing my sweater in that reflexive way one does when suddenly aware of themselves, offering tea or coffee as I motioned toward the kitchen, and he chose tea, following me instead of waiting by the fire as most guests do, his presence calm enough to make me mindful of my own small movements. The way my sleeves slipped down my wrists, or how my fingers tapped the counter while the kettle hummed. When I handed him the steaming cup, our fingers brushed for a heartbeat, entirely innocent and yet grounding, a small spark of human contact that felt unexpected but comforting. And something unreadable flickered in his expression, not desire or anything improper, just a quiet emotion he hadn't put into words yet, something I recognized from years of observing people carrying unspoken weight. We returned to the fire, and in the dim glow, the room felt suspended, as though time had chosen to move more slowly for the two of us. And as he studied the framed photos on the mantel, particularly one of Daniel and me on a windswept beach years ago, he commented gently on how close we seemed, and I smiled, admitting that closeness changes shape with with time that life has its ways of stretching relationships without breaking them. When I asked about his own family, his hesitance said more than his answer and his admission. That warmth, like mine, felt rare, touched me in a way I couldn't quite name it. Because sincerity spoken without embellishment is something I've always treasured but seldom encounter. We sat then, him choosing the edge of the armchair rather than sinking into it, holding the tea with a thoughtful stillness. And as we spoke about long weeks, about the quiet comfort he felt upon entering a soft awareness grew between us, not romantic in any reckless sense, but human. Deeply human, as if two people from different ends of life had found a shared calm in the glow of a fire neither expected to share. The silence between our words felt safe, not empty, the kind that fills a room with meaning instead of awkwardness. And when he asked gently whether I avoided silence, I found myself admitting truths I hadn't said aloud in years, how after my husband passed. Silence had frightened me because it echoed too loudly with what I had lost, and how over time I learned to let quiet become a companion rather than avoidant. He listened with a focus that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't realized I missed. His fingers brushed mine again as he set his cup down just slightly, a fleeting touch but reverent, and the expression he wore a mixture of vulnerability and gratitude settled deep inside me. And as the hours passed, the fire sank into a soft amber glow while we spoke about regret. About how the past has a stubborn way of clinging yet guiding. About how human connection sometimes slips in through the smallest cracks when life is quiet enough to let it. And by the time Daniel finally walked through the door with his familiar hurried energy, apologizing for the traffic, the room felt fuller, almost altered, as if the evening had woven a thread between Evan and me that didn't require words or definitions. Daniel greeted him with warmth, surprised but pleased to see him. And as he moved toward the kitchen, humming casually, that fragile hush returned. The kind that comes after something meaningful has taken place, and as Evan stood to leave, offering a soft thank you for letting him rest in the warmth of my home, I felt something inside me shift gently, as if a window had opened somewhere within, reminding me that at 63 life still holds room for unexpected tenderness, for quiet connections that warm the heart long after the night has ended.